Chapter 2, Coffee and Pastries. Iwaizumi, massaging his temple with both his index finger and thumb, stared coldly at the paper-thin notebook that was plastered on the table in front of him. As he breathed out yet another sigh of exhaustion, his eyes tore away from the notebook and were met with a pair of eager ones. Oikawa.
What the hell is even that?
Iwaizumi shoved the notebook from the table towards Oikawa, perpendicularly in front of him. Oikawa, rolling his eyes, shoved it back towards him and gave him a cheeky grin. It's a notebook. Way to be specific there, Einstein. Oikawa threw a toothpick at him from the tissue dispenser, thankfully hitting Iwaizumi in the chest and not where it wasn't supposed to be. Iwaizumi gave him a nasty scowl, the veins on the side of his head popping slightly. Could you please stop acting like a child? I'm literally so embarrassed to be seen with you right now that it's not even funny. Oikawa, unfazed by what he said, retained the cheeky grin he had on his face. Iwa-chan was always the mean and serious one, you should loosen up sometimes. It was Iwaizumi's turn to roll his eyes. I do loosen up, Dumbus. Oh yeah? By watching Godzilla for who knows how many times and tidying up your room? So? It's therapeutic. Oikawa scoffs. That's so basic of you, Iwa-chan, as usual. Says you who rewatch old cliché drama shows and listen to Taylor Swift and Harry Styles on repeat. At least I have better music tastes than you. And you can't really blame me for watching Pretty Little Liars and The Vampire Diaries. That sounds pretty basic to me. Oh shut up. Oikawa was cut off when the waitress served them their order with a sweet smile on her face, as she placed both plates and beverages on either side of them. After she was done, Iwaizumi and Oikawa thanked her. Shortly after that, Iwaizumi silently grabbed the utensils after sanitizing them and distributed each pair to both him and Oikawa as the latter was sipping on his glass in delight, their previous conversation completely forgotten. I love how they make shakes here, they're so sweet and tasty. Iwaizumi, taking a bite from his sliced chocolate cake, nodded in agreement quietly, taking his time as he also loved their pastries. A few moments later, Oikawa broke the silence halfway through Iwaizumi drinking from his iced coffee, carefully grabbing the notebook that had been set aside, long forgotten when they started eating, and trying not to let it touch their food. I forgot about this. OMG, this is all your fault, Iwa. Iwaizumi, still sipping on his coffee, rolled his eyes, contemplating whether or not to bite back or just let him win this time. He chose the latter, though, he was enjoying his coffee enough to even care. But anyway, I forgive you. Iwaizumi's response was still the same. Oikawa, opening the notebook, flipped through the second page and turned it over 180 degrees so Iwaizumi could read. As he slid the notebook across him, his index fingers slowly trailed from the side towards a very neatly written word, rules, in all capital letters. Iwaizumi hummed, the corner of his lip tugging up slightly. Let me make a wild, obvious, really, guess. Oikawa looks up at him from the notebook and slightly turns his head to the side. What? I haven't opened the notebook yet, but it seems like your efforts were clearly focused on the word rules rather than the actual rules, whatever the hell that means and could be. Oikawa's face turned red. Well, am I right, or am I right as always? Iwaizumi asked frivolously, letting out a small chuckle, seeing Oikawa looking embarrassed but also scared. Oikawa aggressively rubs his palms on his face, trying to, possibly, rub off the fact that Iwaizumi was right, but he doesn't want to admit that regardless. He indeed had the set of rules thought out, but the font style was his biggest obstacle. He then breathed out a shaky, exasperated sigh. Geez, it's actually impressive and totally terrifying that you know me so well. Of course I do, Dumbus, we've known each other since we were kids, so of course I know you would want to make it look stylish. Oikawa cracked a small smile. Although this proves that you are the one who's actually basic. Oikawa's smile dropped. At least my handwriting looks better than yours. And would you stop that already? We both know you're more basic, wearing white t-shirts and shorts. With plain white shoes? Lame. Shut it, Trashikoa. That's called being simple because, unlike you, I don't wear fancy clothes just to buy one thing in a convenience store that takes less than 30 minutes. You started this argument first, too. Pathetic. At least I look hot while buying a loaf of bread. Iwaizumi was about to retort until two elderly couples gave them a nasty scowl, the old man aggressively gesturing to them to quiet down. A few tables were either laughing at the two boys arguing or were even a bit infuriated by their loud disputes. However, the lady who served them had a forced smile on her face as her eye twitched slightly. The boys flinched and settled down. They were much more terrified by the waitress than by the old man, who looks a lot like 𝐂𝐿𝐄 Seijoh. It was that bad. When everything was settled, Iwaizumi sighed as he snatched the notebook that Oikawa was about to use as a weapon during their banter and flipped open the cover page. Let's get this over with. I'm not doing it. Why not? It seems reasonable to do so to make this relationship more believable. Iwaizumi glared at him sharply, making Oikawa squeak. Rule number 9, it is highly recommended to wear a couple shirts outfits when the chance is given. It must strictly be any color aside from black and blue. Iwaizumi scoffs, his eyes trailing to the other set of rules Oikawa wrote. It baffles him how he managed to make even a dozen. I don't understand why you're doing this. You know I'm not reading the whole thing, right? Oikawa snarled at him, flipping at least 2 pages, and pointed his index at the lower right of the even page. Rule number 27, you must read all the rules or there will be consequences. Contract over. Iwaizumi gave him a look of disbelief. He can't be this serious about a fake relationship, was the look Iwaizumi tried to hide, but could be visibly seen by the coy look on Oikawa's face. Seriously? I know what you're thinking, but come on, let me be. I want to be the cool grandpa that tells his grandchildren all sorts of cool stories, and this is one of them. It would be so cool to hear from your 60-year-old grandpa that he actually experienced a very popular romance trope. His eyes glinted as he gestured with his hand as if he were showing off something enormous. Fake dating. Iwaizumi's eye twitched. Resisting the urge to grab him by the collar of his shirt and shake him vigorously, he took a deep breath to calm himself. Wow, you really are annoying. Where's the connection? He props an elbow on the table and rests his chin on his palm, observing the setter in front of him looking at his rulebook with a pleased look. Why me? Oikawa gave him a puzzled look. What do you mean? I mean, of all the people, girls, to be more specific, why'd you choose me as your victim the other day? You're degrading yourself, Iwa-chan. Oikawa blows a strand of hair dangling over his eyebrows and imitates his position while staring at the melting ice inside Iwaizumi's coffee cup. I'm not sure myself, to be honest. I was running from the 3 girls across the hall, and I was looking for you as I was hiding on each corner. You're not answering my main question, Kawa. Ah, right, sorry. He looked at Iwaizumi, while trying not to make eye contact, who was carefully observing him, and noticed that Oikawa was slightly scratching the back of his hand with his free hand. Why was he nervous? It felt like hours before Oikawa replied in a monotone tone, looking anywhere but his eyes as his scratching gradually increased and became faster. He swallowed the lump in his throat and gave Iwaizumi an intense look on his face. Don't make fun of me for this. He smirks at a timid Oikawa. You know I will always make fun of you, Oikawa. Shut up and let me finish. Oikawa closed his eyes and breathed in. I was rejected. Twice. Iwaizumi guffawed. Oi. What's so funny about it? It's a catastrophe, and the world is ending. Iwaizumi, wiping a tear from the sides of his eyes, snorted, trying to stifle a laugh. Oh boo-hoo. Who and why? This is why I don't want to tell you. I ask for solace, but all I get is this. Bad, Iwa, bad. Shut up and tell me already. Oikawa rubs his eyes as he explains to Iwaizumi the events that occurred. In short, I first asked the girl in my class if she agreed to fake date me, it'll help her gain more popularity, you know? Turns out she doesn't like me because her sister, who's a junior here, got heartbroken when I rejected her because she isn't my type, and she also told me I'm annoying and a prick. Blasphemy, I tell you. What's with the big words? It's not like she's wrong. You didn't exactly put her down lightly. Oikawa tsked. Anyway, the second one. I went to see her younger sister. Iwaizumi, who was drinking the remains of his glass, choked. This guy has guts. You did what? Oikawa blinked. I went to see her younger sister, you deaf idiot. Iwaizumi flicks his forehead. Oikawa winced. Ouchies. I heard you the first time, idiot. I'm baffled at the fact that you went after her sister. Iwaizumi drags the in a questioning tone, gaining nothing but a shrug from the boy in front of him. Clearing his throat, he carries on with the story. Anyway, I went to her after practice and asked the same thing, except that instead of saying she'd be able to get fame, she would also be able to be with the man of her dreams and her lifelong crush. That explains why you were on a rush the day before you. Iwaizumi wasn't ready to talk about what had happened in the gym just yet, but he could still feel the tingle on his lips. He cleared his throat. Yeah, that. Oikawa tilts his head, a bit confused. He shook his head as he carried on. Yup. It turns out she just recently got into a relationship with a senior in Shiratorizawa. Our arch nemesis school, for goodness sake. Couldn't it have been anyone else? Oikawa blew raspberries and waved his hand dismissively. But anyway, she seemed a bit annoyed at me during the whole conversation, but regardless, she's still being polite in her responses. Oikawa stops to think, placing his fingers on his chin while looking up. Or it might just be the usual look on her face, I can't really tell. Iwaizumi mentally facepalmed himself. What an egocentric, oblivious idiot. Well, anyway, I told her that it's just a fake relationship, and I told her there are many benefits when you're dating the Oikawa Toru. But then her boyfriend suddenly came out of nowhere and gave me a nasty glare, flipped me the bird, and dragged her away. Iwaizumi throws the toothpick Oikawa had previously launched at him and squints his eyes. Why are you surprised? Their responses are to be expected when you're being pushy and unreasonable. Oikawa scoffs childishly while crossing his arms. Their loss. HMPH. Iwaizumi chuckles. May it be 10 years from now or 10 years earlier, Oikawa Toru never ceases to surprise him every time. Though he'll never admit so, or he'll be hearing about this over and over in a week. Basically, it was just an impulse to choose you, because you know me better than anyone and we're much closer to each other in terms of friendships. I genuinely don't know why, but it just seemed fitting at that time. Oh, and I trust you. Trust? It wasn't something Oikawa could do willingly. Iwaizumi slowly nodded, not exactly sure how to respond. He's glad he has someone he can trust, but he's not exactly ecstatic about the whole ordeal. This whole explanation just seems too narrow, but he doesn't exactly know what to retort or how to feel. As the two continued chattering, they were slowly packing up their things. As promised in their texts last night, Oikawa sheepishly told him that he'd be paying for their orders due to the fact that Iwaizumi carried him outside the school from the clinic. Although Oikawa's foot did hurt a little when twisted to the side. It's not a surprise to him, though. Oikawa might be a prick at times, but he's still a good guy regardless. He knows his limits and knows when things go overboard. After leaving the bill on the counter and deliberately avoiding eye contact with the waitress, whose eyes seemed to be burning with rage underneath the friendly smile facade, the two silently strolled along the almost empty streets, a routine they do before they take different paths on their way home. A few beats later, Iwaizumi glanced at Oikawa, who looked like he was deep in thought. He breaks the silence by pointing at his foot. How's your foot doing? Oikawa glances at him and slows his pace, then drops to his feet. It's all right now, although it still stings a bit. Iwaizumi frowns with worry. What if it's serious? Do you want to go to a nearby clinic to have it checked out? Oikawa dismissively waved his hands in the air. You worry too much, Hajime. I'm fine, it'll be fine. His frown deepens. Are you sure? Are you positive? Is there anything I could do? Yes, and yes. Oikawa stops and gives him a flirtatious wink, placing a hand on his hip and lifting his foot. He pointed at his foot and puckered his lips. Give it a kiss, and it'll feel all better. Iwaizumi's face was indescribable, but the next thing that happened was a blur. Oikawa was holding both of Iwaizumi's wrists away from his face as his fingers were itching to grab the collar of his shirt. Oikawa screeched as his fumes gushed out of his ears and nose. How about you kiss my fist when I smash it on your pretty face, pretty boy? Oikawa loosens his grip, his mouth agape. Iwaizumi immediately dragged him to a corner where not many people could see them. He pushed him against the wall as his fist was about to meet Oikawa's face. Of course, Iwaizumi was clearly buffing just to scare him, but he was puzzled to see Oikawa's flabbergasted expression plastered on his face. What? Oikawa, whose eyes almost sparkled in delight, slightly covered his slightly parted bottom lip and replied in almost a whisper. You think I'm pretty? Iwaizumi lowered his grip on his shirt and his hands as he looked at Oikawa, not understanding him. Huh? Oikawa bit his lip. You called me, pretty boy, Iwa-chan. Ah, right. He did call him a pretty boy, but he didn't realize it until he pointed it out. However, he did say that not as a compliment, but out of pure infuriation. He scoffed at Oikawa's delusionality. You idiot, I wasn't trying to compliment you. Stop being a fool. Let's go, it'll get dark soon. Iwaizumi drops his grip, making Oikawa stagger backwards as his back lightly hits the concrete wall behind him. Iwaizumi casually shoves his hands in his pockets as he walks towards the pavement leading to the intersection where they'll part ways. He wasn't thinking much of it, he just thought it was Oikawa asking for his ego to be fed. Unlucky for him, he won't be spoon-feeding him since his ego has shot up through the sky. As he was about to leave the alleyway, Oikawa called out to him. He grunts in response as he turns around to face him. Oikawa, with his head down and his hands clenched in a fist, had an indescribable look on his face. He couldn't exactly see him, as his hair covered half of his face. Oikawa then spoke in a soft voice, something you don't hear from him very often. Iwaizumi doubles back and gives a questioning grunt. Oikawa murmurs something incoherent under his breath. Huh? Oikawa, in a soft tone, tilted his head to the side, gazing up at him with curiosity vividly glinting, a soft beam of light softly illuminating his soft features. Do you really think so, Iwa-chan? Iwaizumi felt that tug again, still not understanding the meaning behind it. In any case, it's not only making him feel frustrated, but also aggravated every second. Unable to formulate a response, he nods his head. He won't deny that his best friend has certain features that will catch the eyes of people passing by or watching their plays. Oikawa smiles, but not with his usual teasing and playful smile, the rare genuine smile. Tud. Tud. He brushes that feeling off and turns around, his back facing Oikawa. He doesn't know how to respond, but the words quickly flew out of his mouth before his mind could process them. You don't look too bad, Toru. Oikawa made a squeak of delight and pounced on his back, laughing at Iwaizumi, who was trying to keep his balance and stand on both feet. Haha. Iwa-chan complimented me. This is the happiest day of my life. He doesn't quite understand, why is he acting like he won 1,000,000 yen? It's a compliment that he receives almost every day. What's the big deal? Cut it out, Oikawa, you're being too much. Iwaizumi grunts and tries to peel Oikawa away from him as his legs are wrapped around his waist and his arms around his neck. Oikawa started pinching his cheeks. Iwa-chan is so cute. Iwaizumi's face turned hot. Get off of me, Shitakawa. He manages to peel Oikawa from him, but they both end up falling on the ground on their buttocks. Iwaizumi has had it. He was about to tell him off when Oikawa suddenly stood up and kissed him on the cheek. Oikawa chuckles. He bends down to grab his sling bag that was toppled on the floor next to them and slings it on his shoulder, then checks his phone as it is vibrating over and over again. Oikawa clicks his tongue. Mum wants me home right now for a family emergency. I've got to go. Iwaizumi, still not processing what had happened, stared blankly at him with slightly wide eyes. Oikawa, nonchalant about what he did, pretended it didn't happen and started walking away from the alley. Then, without looking back, he waves his hand goodbye. Today was fun, babe. See you on Monday. Before leaving, he looks back, gives Iwaizumi his signature flirtatious wink, and walks away. Iwaizumi finally got out of his trance and touched the cheek where Oikawa had kissed him. Did that just happen? "4:37 a.m., Monday. It isn't unusual for Iwaizumi to wake up early to get ready for school, but he woke up an hour early, an hour before his alarm rang. He couldn't go back to sleep, and he has had trouble doing so ever since last Saturday. He still remembers the feel of his lips against his and on his cheek all too well. He decides to go for a quick jog around his neighborhood, hearing nothing but the occasional sounds of crickets and mostly his own breath and pants, and his shoes thumping harshly on the cold pavement upon each step. It had rained a few hours ago, so he had to be careful of his surroundings and make sure he didn't step on any puddles along the way. More so, it was hard to do so when his thoughts were on a whirlwind and he was trying hard to set them in place. He had so many questions, but he didn't know what they were. He seems so aware but unaware of it at the same time. There were a lot of thoughts circling around his mind and unanswered questions. He knows that Oikawa might also just be doing this for fun and pride. If only he told the girl he and I were just friends and the whole ordeal was staged for the girl in the clinic and stood up for himself. Then none of these unwanted perpetual outbrays of these thoughts and feelings he had bottled up would cease to exist. He abruptly stopped in his tracks and took a deep breath. Biting his lip, he scrolls down in his contacts and taps on Oikawa's contact number and quickly shoots him a text. "Hey, can we talk later?" He knows Oikawa won't usually be awake at this early hour. "Good morning, love." Face blowing a kiss. He's awake? That's a surprise. He doesn't wake up in about. He checks the time on his phone. 1 hour and 43 minutes, to be precise. "You're up early, Shitakawa." Yikes, and here I thought I'd also get a sweet good morning text from you with excessive heart emojis. Loudly crying face. I'm hurt, Iwa babes, broken heart. Are you ever going to run out of stupid pet names? Nope, heart. Not surprised, cut it out, Oikawa. Not even a babe. Wow, double kill. And here I am trying to make you blush with my sweet text's melting face. You must be blushing so hard, RN, I bet, wink. I'm cringing, but carry on. So mean. Anyway, I gotta get ready, I have a surprise for you later at school. And yes, let's talk and tell your boyfriend everything that's on your mind, heart heart. Okay. Stop being so dry and love me. Try again next life. Bitch. Iwaizumi snorts as he places his phone back in his pockets and turns around to go back to his place to change and get ready. The heavy weight on his chest loosened up a bit when he informed Oikawa a minute ago that they needed to talk, but not completely. As he was jogging back towards his place, a small grin slowly formed its way onto his lips as he reminisced about their last conversation, subconsciously, and completely unaware. Just like the events that will occur the moment he steps foot in 𝐂𝐈𝐍𝐻𝐿. This may be, and will be, the longest day yet. A series of plot twists await Hajime Iwaizumi. With that, Iwaizumi picks up his pace and smirks mischievously as he formulates a plan to get back at Oikawa. You reap what you sow, Toru.
悩まずに生きることさ、俺たちのこの知識、はくなまたた